Can you be a Christian and not be religious?
Can you be a Christian and not be religious? I think the answer is yes, but of course it depends on how one is defining religious. I definitely have a certain way I think of that word. I think of religion as a series of rituals and religious practices that are done in religious meetings and things like that. Some people think of religion as covering the whole category of a relationship with God. You obviously cannot be a Christian without a relationship with God. And so religion is a term that needs to be defined more carefully. A relationship with God is what Christianity is, and insofar as conducting that relationship, let's say, obeying God, reading the Bible, praying, talking to God, those are normal parts of a relationship. Of course, you can't be a Christian without that. But the way I usually use the word religion is to distinguish it from a relationship. A religion is often made up of special duties, like attending religious meetings, performing certain rituals, and so forth on a regular basis, which I don't think necessarily are at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. Christianity is not primarily a religion, in my opinion, not as I use the term. It's more political than religious because it's the kingdom of God. Basically, the message of Christianity is there's another king named Jesus, and we are all under his authority, whether we recognize it or not. And the sooner we recognize it and surrender our battle against him and submit to him, the better off we'll be, because that's what God has called all people to do. Then, of course, we have a relationship with a king. And although modern people don't know very much about kings, I think most people still have enough information from old novels and fairy tales and stuff like that kings are people who rule and who are to be obeyed by their citizens. And when we are told that Jesus is our king, we realize that, okay, this is not about jumping through religious hoops, going to meetings and special rituals, but rather it's about every day obeying Jesus Christ and living as if he really is your king. If he is not your king, then you're not in the kingdom. And if you're not in the kingdom, you're not what the Bible calls a Christian. You see, the word Christian in the Bible means a disciple. That's how it's defined in Acts 11:26. It says the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch. So if we say, can you be a Christian without being religious? I'd say, by the way I typically use the word religious, I would say it's possible. But you can't be a Christian without being a disciple. And what is a disciple? Jesus said, if you continue in my words, you're my disciples indeed. So obeying Jesus' words, because he's the king, and doing so day by day, because you're a disciple of his, is what it means to be a Christian. The observance of religious rituals can be tacked onto that insofar as people find satisfaction and feel close to God through different forms of worship. Some people like to do a lot of liturgical things in their worship. I don't criticize that, except for the problem that it often causes, that once you become very tied up in liturgy, you begin to, by stages, think of that as Christianity, when in fact really what it is a preferred form of expressing your devotion to God. But there are other forms to express devotion, and you can do all those liturgical things without having any devotion to God. So the problem with religion and liturgy and ritual is not that it's worthless. It sometimes is a legitimate form of devotion to God. But once you have the outward ritual, it's easy to click into the mechanical following of the ritual, even when the devotion's completely gone. So that we have the problem that the Ephesian church had in Revelation chapter 2, that they were doing all their works they'd always done, even from the earliest times of their Christian lives, but now they were doing it without love. They had left their first love, but they were still very, very busy doing their Christian activities. So really, you can't be a Christian without being loving. You can't be a Christian without being a disciple. Of course, the evidence of being a disciple, Jesus said, is that you love. You can't be a Christian without being committed to Jesus as your King and Lord. But you can be a Christian without much in the way of religious rituals and trappings and things like that.